For Sunday, August 19th, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, a fifth plea in the City Hall corruption case in Atlanta. Could we have ballot chaos in November? And in Fulton County, guess what? Your tax bills are being mailed. Congratulations. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on this Sunday. It was a key week in the months-long or years-long corruption investigation at Atlanta City Hall, because this week the federal attorney, the U.S. attorney, B.J. Pack, came forward to the cameras and the reporters and laid down the law. And Phil, you've said consistently that there would be more indictments, and B.J. Pack emphasized that this week, and which was remarkably tough speech from a federal prosecutor.
It was remarkably tough. It's a great phrase there, because the U.S. Attorney B.J. Pack is undertaking and expanding what is the second largest federal prosecution in the country, right after the Mueller investigation. That's very interesting. Because
nine U.S. attorneys on the case.
That's right, and more FBI agents are on the case. And there's several things to this, several interesting quotes. One of them that stuck out with me is that he was asked by a reporter, is Kasim Reed, the former mayor, targeted, who presided over this culture of corruption? He said, I'm not going to answer that, but he did say that it starts at the top with this pay-to-play bribery contracting culture.
Let me set the stage here. The reason for B.J. Pack's appearance was the guilty plea by Katrina Taylor Parks,
right,
who was Deputy Chief of Staff to Kasim Reed, and she's facing as much as 5 years in prison. And she is, as I mentioned, the fifth person in the Reed administration, or around the Reed administration, to plead. Alexis, do you think this spreads widely?
Well, I'm not sure. It's taken such a shift from the original investigation, which was about contracts and bribery for airport contracts. Now they're looking more broadly into
everyday business.
Right, right. So it'll be interesting to see where it leads, but I'm hopeful that it will not be broadly widespread.
Well, I don't know, Carrie, have you ever a prosecutor? I know you're an attorney. Did you ever work in the prosecution side of the business?
I did not.
Okay. How do you interpret what B.J. Pack said? I mean, I think clearly this is now squeezing the lower rungs. Katrina Parks Taylor, or Taylor Parks, gosh, I can't get that right. Katrina Parks, let's just call her that. She's one step removed from the mayor because she was the Deputy Chief of Staff. How do you see this going?
Well, one of the things that I heard was that Ms. Parks is cooperating with the investigation, and that is always a signal that they're looking for more, and these kinds of investigations tend to move upward, up the food chain. There isn't that much food chain left to go up here. So it sounds like Kasim Reed is a target, and if he is a target, this is not going to end soon.
Well, it's the first time I think that I've heard lots of people saying Kasim Reed is the target. We have resisted it on this broadcast, for example, but this is pretty clear.
Well, as I said, because of the investigation shifting its direction, the other thing that is, I guess, worrisome about it is that it could be, it could stop where it does. It could go to the Chief of Staff. I mean, there are other places where it could go too.
Sure.
And also, the Mayor Reed could be not a part of it. I mean, he could be.
Well, it also, in U.S. Attorney Pack's statement, he threw a spotlight on a city council member, unnamed. And as we have pointed out repeatedly on this broadcast, we still don't know where bribes have gone to, and this is what they're going to be looking at. So yeah, it's going to be expanding, and I think that Pack made it clear again there'll be more indictments, to your point.
You know,
the other thing they said they were doing too is reviewing those stacks of boxes of papers that Mayor Reed presented when they were asked for information.
Pages.
So,
and the fact that the Reed administration had really stonewalled and held up these records, and now we're seeing things, and I think we need to give a nod to the investigative reporting, both the TV stations and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and others.
Oh yeah, the AJC. The AJC was absent for 8 years, jumped in with both feet, and a great team of reporters, and they're leading the thing, and it's very good reporting. if you're an Atlanta City Council member these days, you must feel like you've been whiplashed because it's a relatively new city council with some new people who we can assume are not infected with all the old afflictions of the Atlanta City Council. But you've got this daily drivel of corruption news. And then out of nowhere comes this story that $1 billion has been committed, $1 billion or more has been committed to the Gulch Project. That area behind Phillips Arena, the old Norfolk Southern building, behind the old AJC building. That land has been the subject of speculation for the 45 years I've been here. And now here comes the $1 billion thing, Phil. That's and the council didn't know a thing about it. They got it from a press release.
Well, number one, that is terrible. The council should be informed, and if the Reed era is over and the Keisha Lance Bottoms mayoral era is starting, that should not stand, and I'm glad that these city council members have said, no, we need to ask more questions, and rightly so. And some of the questions that ought to be asked is, why is this out-of-state multi-billion-dollar company want its handout for taxpayers' money for this project? Secondly, again, I think a question.
But they do. All of them do that.
Well, and that's why we need to
Unfortunately, they all do it now. You're right.
And we need to question why, since the information didn't come to City Council. And then secondly, again, I'm going to bring up the name of former Mayor Reed. What commitments, I would ask if I was a councilman, what commitments were made by this company, CIM, to Mayor Reed?
Well, remember, this began kind of innocently, if you will. Tony Ressler, Anthony Ressler, owns the Atlanta Hawks. His brother, Richard Ressler, owns the CIM, and I guess they're partners in some way. And this looked like a way to originally to use that Gulch land to enhance the property that is Phillips Arena and make the Hawks a more enjoyable experience. And then all of a sudden Amazon got in the middle of it, and CIM, it looks like, is making the big play to land that Amazon regional headquarters, second headquarters, huh? And so that's where the billion comes in. But is that billion from the city plus maybe $1 billion from the state that's been discussed? Whoa.
Well, that's why City Council has rightly said, let's ask some questions.
Well, first of all, what they're talking about is they're talking about getting $1 billion from city financing from bond issuance, but most of the money is going to be private, and it's going to be coming in from out of the state, which is an idea that I kind of like. As a matter of fact, the whole idea behind this is we've got a company that wants to make us HQ2, and they're from out of state. So I say, hey, that's great. As economic development is part of what Atlanta focuses on. I do work for the Development Authority of Fulton County, and one of the things that we always look at in terms of these bond deals where there's some form of tax reductions is the restructuring of taxes to introduce certain efficiencies to bring businesses into Fulton County. And you don't want to leave a place like the Gulch fallow for 50 years when you could put billions of dollars worth of assets there that are subject to ad valorem tax. It could be a great win for the taxpayers of Fulton County and Atlanta.
And I respect some of those points, but to Dick's first point, we know about it as much as the City Council, and so that's why they've said, halt, we have to ask some of these questions and see what all this is about.
On the other hand, when you're competing for something like Amazon HQ2, you have to have a certain degree of secrecy about your bid, so your competitors don't know where you're going.
I know we're going to talk about.
It reminds you of the Atlanta Braves moved to Cobb County.
That's a very good point. It also reminded me, and I know we're going to talk about it later, what happened in Roswell this past week when they announced this giant project, and then all of a sudden 25,000 people signed a petition saying we were totally opposed to it. No one told us about it. We read about it in the newspapers. Very similar to this.
I don't think you're going to see that kind of resistance to the Gulch downtown. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about the November elections, but in a different way. Could we be voting on paper ballots? It's all in U.S. District Court in Atlanta. We'll fill you in just a minute.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
And even easier, find us on Facebook. And remember, we have our own YouTube channel, The Georgia Gang. Our topic coming up next is one that requires a little bit of explanation. There's been talk in Georgia for several years of changing the entire way we vote. And the Secretary of State, Brian Kemp, who happens to be a candidate for governor, has been looking at that long term, expecting the General Assembly to act next year on approving a new voting system. In the meantime, dissidents have sued the state in federal court, asking that we switch to paper ballots or a paper trail. Now, it turns out that our guest panelist, Carrie Ichter, is actually part of that lawsuit. So let's go to the horse's mouth.
Well, I
don't really think there'll be paper ballots in November.
I hope there are.
Really?
Governor Barnes and his team are defending electronic voting, and they are among the only people on the planet who think that's a good idea. You talk to any expert who understands electronic voting, they will say that it is susceptible to hacking, it is defective, and there is no way to audit an outcome. And that's terribly problematic. So what everyone needs to understand is that every precinct in Georgia at every election already has paper ballots present, because every precinct has to have provisional ballots just in case somebody shows up and their qualifications to vote are unclear. So you get a paper ballot from that person, you set it aside, and if the race is close enough that those have to be counted, then there will be a determination as to the qualifications of those particular voters, and if it's determined that those voters are qualified, their votes will then be counted. So all this means is you take the paper ballots that each and every precinct has, and you have a bigger order that goes to the printer.
And we would get the election returns from Fulton County a week from Thursday or something? That's preposterous, Carrie. I love you, but that's preposterous.
You have optical scanners that will have them counted the same night. And even if it was a couple of days, I'd rather have the right result in a couple of days than the wrong result immediately.
These machines we vote on can't be hacked. They're standalone.
Oh, yes, they can.
They're standalone machines.
You can take
They're not hooked to anything.
You can take the card. You can take a card that you use, that you put into that machine, and if it has a virus that's on it, that you can get those cards out in the marketplace. You can add a virus to it. You can download it to the machine. Then the downloads are taken to count the votes off of that machine. They're introduced into a server that counts all of the votes, and it can move the virus into the entire system.
Well, that's true, but I think we're getting away from the ultimate big picture here. Judge Amy Totenberg, this is in court obviously, asked these questions: can we do this for the November election? I do agree with Carrie that I'm not a big fan of electronic voting. Yes, I believe there should be an audit trail, but that said, you forgot to mention that we'd have to train thousands of poll workers. There's not enough. You mentioned optical scanners. Yes, there are some at every polling place, but you'd have to expand a lot more. This would cost untold millions. So the judge is rightly asking questions. Will this be chaos? And that's what Secretary Kemp says. It'll be chaos.
I find myself in the unusual position of agreeing with Roy Barnes. Let's get through one more election with the system we've got. I agree with y'all. The system does need a paper trail,
yes,
an audit coming from it. But I think trying to switch between now and November 3rd, 5th, whatever it is, would be a disaster.
What you should know is that Prince George County in Maryland made the switch in less than 2 months to cover its April primary this year, and they said that the paper ballot system with optical scanners was more efficient, it was easier to implement, and it was easier to count the ballots and get the results.
But they had the money, and I don't believe they had to beef up the... You have to train poll workers. They need training already. Think of thousands more.
Think of Fulton County right now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but look at the Secretary of State. He's been Secretary of State for how many years? And he's not done anything to address this issue?
He's in to work with the General Assembly.
There's a commission, I agree with Dick, and we are going to have a new system. That's the good news.
But where's the leadership is what I'm talking about. That wasn't there. He didn't want it because...
Well, he named a commission to get
He's soliciting bids.
This.
I don't know what more he could have done.
Less a year ago.
Assembly hasn't approved the expense.
Yeah, that was like 20 minutes ago he did this.
Well, but the General Assembly didn't, they had a bill before them this past session. They didn't agree on it.
And by the way, there's no evidence. There's no evidence that this system has ever been hacked. Let's just point that out.
Well, that's because hackers can cover their trail when they hack you, and
it's just because it hasn't been discovered.
You cannot tell that they have been
there. So you think you're worried at night that we've been hacked over these years?
I'm worried that we can be hacked, and I'm also worried that there is evidence that Russians have been looking at county computer systems.
Well, everybody's looking at it. The North Koreans, the Iranians. That's a given.
Looking at it is different than changing a vote. So anyway, well, look, we've run out. That was pretty interesting. We've run out of time. We didn't even get to what we intended to talk about in that segment, so we'll do that when we return. So here's a shout out to all the property taxpayers in Fulton County. Congratulations. You will be getting a tax bill. Better late than never. Judge approved it that the Fulton County tax bills, you've already received your assessments.
Yes.
You're Fulton County, right, Carrie?
I am.
Okay, so congratulations, you're going to get a bill.
And 42,000 people have appealed in Fulton County.
43.
Oh, okay. Good.
And counting, I imagine.
Yes.
But really, congratulations, because your bills aren't going to bear any resemblance to reality. You understand that because your assessments have been screwed up for 3 years. And remember this, the state is yet to approve the 2017 digest
Yes.
or the 2018 digest. Congratulations to you all. Whereas in DeKalb County, one of those nice things that I get to say about every 25 years, we got a tax cut in the main in DeKalb County. Property taxpayers paying a 1 cent sales tax extra, but by the reckoning of my newspaper, certainly not scientific, it looks like the typical homeowner in North DeKalb anyway got a tax cut of about $500 this year.
That's
And again,
pretty-
we don't get to say that very often,
No,
so
that's a good thing.
there it is, let's say it. You mentioned that Roswell story. I want to put it in a little different perspective for you. We taped last Friday. We knew that story was out there.
It's the tennis center
The
that
tennis
was
center,
proposed.
right? The 145 clay tennis courts. It would be the tennis capital of the South, if not the nation.
Right.
Clay courts. And the big thing is it would be in Big Creek, which is generally considered parkland, with native forest and trees and trails and that
Acres
sort
and
of
acres.
thing. Nature.
Right.
And but it was funny, the timing. By the time we taped Friday, and we didn't mention it, when I got back to my office, there was one of the best written emails I've ever received from a citizen attacking this thing and saying, we already have 25,000 signatures, more than the votes were cast for the mayor of Roswell.
Oh my.
And I said, whoa, welcome to this story. And he realized that by Sunday, Mayor Lori Henry had canceled the whole deal. Forget it. Sorry we ever brought it up, huh? What do you think, Phil?
Well, and it's kind of like we talked about earlier on the broadcast. Don't read about this in the media first if you're a mayor or a city council person. And so, again, questions had to be asked. Neighbors, it might have been, had hearings, basic things you do. So hopefully lesson learned.
Well, and I don't know if it's completely dead. Is it really, really completely dead? I mean, they could still have the pitch made and still have hearings about it.
Well, no, I think it is.
I think it's dead.
I think it is dead.
The
because
location is wrong.
I also hate to say this, but Lori Henry's a relatively new mayor of Roswell, having defeated Jerry Wood. Or no, he ran for state house. But anyway, Lori
She
Henry's the
said, she
mayor.
rightly said, we're listening now to the people, and so I believe it is dead.
The sense of my email traffic is she's in deep trouble over this because it wasn't discussed with anyone but the family foundation, the Krause family, that will do this.
Yeah, they offered it as a sort of a gift to the city. So it was well intentioned, but it didn't go right politically.
Another little note, City of Stonecrest, another one of our new cities, their council should be commended because this week they turned down an effort to change their charter to allow the mayor's salary to jump from $20,000 to $75,000. Little Stonecrest is a city that supplies only 3 services. And in some quarters, that's known as the Vernon Jones Bill.
Oh my.
Failed in the General Assembly, now failed in the Stonecrest Council. Really, $75,000 for a mayor to oversee 3 cities, 3 services, please. And Phil, you won a victory of sorts this week when the state Supreme Court upheld that decision to bar a candidate from the ballot, I believe it was Forsyth County, who is not a U.S. citizen at the time.
That's right. The state Supreme Court unanimously agreed with Fulton County Judge Craig Schwall that this state legislative candidate was not a citizen of the state of Georgia. And this is upholding the rule of law, and even though the Open Borders lobby is upset about it, this was the right decision.
Well, yeah, but she is a citizen. Was it a woman? I can't remember. A citizen of the United States.
Yes, but it makes no difference. She was a citizen a year ago. She was not a citizen of the state of Georgia.
Which is a rule that you have to be for 2 years.
Correct. That's right.
Which is beyond what the federal law suggests.
Well, then you'll have to change the state constitution.
She can run for federal office then, but state law says you have to be a citizen for 2 years.
So that's a good point. Yeah, there's always a difference between, you know, John Ossoff ran for Congress, didn't have to live in the district.
Right.
There are all differences between state and federal. And then, Phil, you dropped a topic on me later. A $30,000 ethics fine against a political lobbyist?
That's right, and I think this is a teaching moment for a lot of these folks that have these organizations. They don't register, they're doing advocacy lobbying, they're collecting money, and then they're spending the money. And this was a $30,000 fine. It was upheld in a Fulton County courtroom. It was originally handed down by the Ethics Committee, and I'm glad that that's showing some teeth, because this was, her name's Carolyn Cosby. She had about 5 or 6 of these groups, and it's about time that we had a crackdown.
These nonprofit advocacy groups?
These are advocacy groups, the political advocacy groups.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
And they're raising money, and then they're spending it on political advocacy. So I think this is a signal to all of these people that are trying to be non-transparent and secretive.
Well, it's also maybe a signal to the General Assembly that they ought to come up with some affordable way for nonprofits to participate in the lobbying efforts in the state.
But you, as a vendor, you do have to, by state law, you have to register with the state if you're a vendor lobbyist.
Even say that you want to protect wildflowers, you'd have to register?
If you are raising money and doing political advocacy.
Okay,
yep.
I got you. All right, well, listen, I want to talk about the campaign shocker of the week. I mean, really, this governor's race just couldn't get any more topsy-turvy. Jimmy Carter endorsed Stacey Abrams.
With a beautiful endorsement, too.
Wow.
I mean, with that endorsement and the Carter machine behind her, she's guaranteed at least 3 votes.
Wow.
Maybe 2.
She might carry America's.
Well, she's going to get a lot of votes behind that, I think.
And they call it news, right?
Right, I was going to say, this is news.
It's sort of like Trump endorsing Kemp, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, really.
Well, actually, yeah, that Cagle was still in the fight at that point. But
And of course, the ad wars have started and will get far more nastier
After Labor Day. We got to just hold our breath until Labor Day, right?
But there's going to be plenty of money, so you're seeing the ads now, too.
Yeah, they've already started.
time to get the cable disconnected.
There you go, and stop the robocalls. All right.
Indeed.
When we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we'll begin the winners and losers segment with Phil.
Well, Dick, thank you. I want to make a winner, a Republican from the good old days, Powell Moore. You may remember him, Dick, and I think all of you might remember him. He was very prominent in the Nixon White House, and then he went into the Reagan White House, very influential Georgian. We lost him this past week at age 80. And I think that, you know, Dick, you'll probably talk about this. We can have several winners and losers on that terrible hit. I think the Major League Baseball was too weak when an intentional pitch at 97 miles per hour hits a batter. There should be a severe penalty.
He only misses one start. The pitcher's name is Jose Arrieta,
Yes.
and he only misses one start.
Yeah, and he's the loser.
We should have him deported.
Yes, thank you. We will check into his citizenship, Gary.
Indeed.
And there it is. All right, Alexis.
Okay, well, I'm just going to start with Aretha Franklin, and we're all a loser, but she is certainly, her life is a celebration and a winner, so we're salute her in her passing. And she was also a civil rights supporter. She did concerts for Joseph Lowery's organization, for many organizations, for Dr. King even early back in the 60s. So she's been a supporter of women's rights, civil rights for everyone, everything.
And everybody talks about her song Respect.
Yes.
But I think her rendition of My Country 'Tis of Thee at the inauguration was one of the most beautiful things.
It was pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing.
Did I steal?
Oh, yes, yes. I'm sorry. Let me salute Barbara Buckley Washington. She passed this week in a terrific car crash. It was much too soon for her to die. She was one of the first black reporters at the Associated Press. Ooh. She and I were reporters together when I was at the Constitution. And it was really a loss and a shock. And she most recently had been working on city council staff.
All right. Jerry?
Related to the Acuna story, Keith Nose Candy Hernandez sought to justify the pitch that hit our rookie superstar, and I say he is a loser of that. He should be suspended. Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, is a loser, having declared that you cannot make America great again because it was never great in the first place. This guy is a third-generation immigrant. His dad was governor. He's a governor. How can you say America's not great when immigrants can come to this country and enjoy that kind of opportunity?
Especially it was his father who called it, who actually used Reagan-like terms about the shining city on the hill.
Yes.
I will mention the passing of Bill Nordmark. He was a fixture in downtown Atlanta and civic duties, and I used to see him at a lot of basketball games in North Fulton County.
Because he had survived polio and played basketball.
That's right. He was a basketball guy. And Robbie Hammer.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we'll begin that with you, Phil.
Well, thank you. I have a winner. He was a pillar of the modern Republican Party. It was Powell Moore. We lost him at age 80 this last week. He was very prominent in the Nixon White House, the Ford White House. He later went into the Reagan White House to assist the president. And, you know, I've got to make the loser, and there, you could have several winners and losers here, but Jose Urena, remember that Braves game the other day where our rookie batter was hit with a 97-mile-per-hour intentional hit, and what was the penalty for that? It was he misses what, one
6-game suspension, one start.
One start.
Yeah,
terrible.
Ridiculous.
Loser.
Very much.
All right,
well, in a related story, Keith Nose Candy Hernandez came out and tried to justify that conduct by Urena, and that's just unforgivable, and I think that he ought to be suspended by whoever's paying him as well. But I think that the bigger loser is the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who came out this week and said that you can't make America great again because America was never great to begin with. This is a man whose family came from Italy. It's third generation. 2 of the generations have produced governors. That's opportunity that you only get in America. How can you make statements like that?
Of course. Alexis, what do you have?
Okay, well, I'm going to start with Barbara Buckley Washington. She passed in a terrible car crash this week, and she was one of the first black reporters and editors at the Associated Press back in the days when I was a reporter at the Atlanta Constitution. And she will be sorely missed. Her most recent tenure was working on the staff of City Council. And then finally, we got to mention Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. She's dead, but long live the Queen.
Right. And for all the attention to her song Respect, I think her version of My Country 'Tis of Thee at the inauguration was absolutely brilliant. And I will salute Robbie Hamrick, who died this week. He was the director of the GBI years ago and supervised the GBI in the case of Atlanta's missing and murdered children. He was a good one back in the day. And that pitcher for the Marlins, boy, let me at him with a bat. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.